typically that would involve me going up and knocking somebody on the forehead and say, hey, we're having a problem. I need to figure out what the problem is. Let's sit down and have a discussion. You tell me what the problem is, and I'll see what I can do to fix it. And if I'm not the problem, then we need to address your behavior, because people will deny that it's race-based, but when you can show them that they're treating you differently than they are someone else, sometimes it's very subtle, tone of voice, mannerisms, etc., and sometimes it's very blatant. And a lot of times people will use humor to try to
Hey, it's Breaking Barriers, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging podcast. We're here for real talk. We're not afraid to go there, and we want you to come away emboldened and energized to take action and make change.
We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger.
When I set out to help someone, it is my intention to do just that. I'm not trying to do anything other than meet somebody at their humanity.
Your world has changed, but your dreams shouldn't have to. That's why Kirkwood is your next best step. With affordable, flexible, and close-to-home options, now's a great time to start or finish your Kirkwood degree. Learn more at kirkwood.edu/findyourfuture. Displaced or discouraged at work? Kirkwood can help you learn a new skill or totally reinvent yourself for a brand new career. With so many flexible and affordable options, you can get back on track fast. Learn more at kirkwood.edu/findyourfuture.
All right. What up, world? What up? We're back for another episode of Top Ranks Breaking Barriers, the DEI&B podcast, brought to you by our 5-star presenting sponsor, Kirkwood Community College, and our silver sponsor, PG Cares. I'm your co-host, Anthony Arrington. I am joined by my co-host, Nick Ford, and Joy. How you guys doing? Joy Briscoe, how are you?
Good. Excited.
Yes.
Excited for today.
Good. Another good episode we got coming. Nick, why don't you tell us who's joining us today? We got some great folks with us.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Anytime I can talk to other Navy vets,
Yeah.
us old people, us old gray people.
Nick, our guest said, speak for yourself.
they're both older than me by a little bit. Not by much.
Okay.
So, Dr. John Cordle is retired from the Navy as a captain in 2013 after 30 years of service. He commanded the USS Oscar Austin, DDG 79, and USS San Jacinto, the CG-56. He earned the U.S. Navy League's Captain John Paul Jones Award for Inspirational Leadership in 2010. He is recognized with the 2019 Service Navy Association and U.S. Naval Institute Proceedings Author of the Year Award for his extensive writing on leadership, crew endurance, manpower, and diversity. And he doesn't have it in here, but he was also my boss once on the Harriers.
That's very important.
That's the top bullet. Yeah, that's important.
We're getting all the blackmail information.
And it was back in the 90s.
Oh.
So, hence the old part. Keith Green is a retired surface warfare officer who sued from, I know this is wrong. Well, they're really trying to make you old here. They have 1875 to 84.
Feels like 1875.
That's
1975 to 84. As enlisted in 85 to 97 as an officer, similar to me, did have someone enlisted some officer, retiring as lieutenant commander. He was a communications officer on the USS Bogey, followed by 4 department head tours as engineering officer, executive officer on hydrofoil, and import training officer with Desron, which is a destroyer squadron for you non-Navy types, and a base telephone officer down at Jacksonville. He is the author of Black Officer, White Navy, which will be published as a revised edition coming this year. Welcome to both of you, and I'm really excited about this. So,
all right.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yep, no problem. I will warn you all, it is very dangerous to have 2 nukes in the same area together. So, as engineer types,
Well, listen, I start off, actually, if you don't mind. Keith, I wanted to ask you a question. I was reading your background and your book, and I was obviously the book just came, Black Officer, White Navy, so I haven't had a chance to read the book, but I read the summary on it, but was reading some of your background, and I actually was looking at your questions that you wanted to ask, and I was like, these are some good questions, but one thing I didn't see on your list of questions that you suggested was really more about your mental state. I was listening to an interview you did a few years back with Quentin's close-up, a well-known journalist in South Carolina. You were doing an interview with him, and you were talking about when you discovered that you were getting, when equipment was not coming to you as a manager, you were ordering equipment, and your white counterparts were getting equipment much faster than you. You put a spreadsheet together and you figured out that you were being racially targeted and you weren't being treated fairly. You kept coming to work and you were getting so stressed out, you said, that you could literally grab a chunk of your hair and pull it out because you were working so hard and you were so stressed out. That stood out to me because obviously you kept going to work knowing that you were being discriminated against. So I'm curious about your mindset and how you were able to get through that, and what could you tell folks that allowed you to get through those days?
Well, I watched a lot of the other black officers in the Mayport Basin throwing in the towel and quitting. And not just black, it was white officers too. Back in that time period, the Surface Warfare Navy was eating its young. And a lot of people just could not handle the pressure. And I just did not want to be one of those guys. I knew I was doing everything that I could do to succeed, but there were people actively working, trying to prevent me from succeeding. It made no sense to me that no one would help me because I was making it very plain. I don't have a problem sharing if I think there's an issue. But it didn't make any sense to me that I couldn't get my CO, XO, the other department heads. No one would help me. So I finally decided either I'm going to self-destruct or I'm just going to have to fight back. So what I did was, and I'll tell you, I was on my way to work one day and I decided I was going to quit. I was driving into work. It was about 5 o'clock, 5:30. And I said, I just can't do this anymore. And I was going to drive down and sit on the beach for about an hour and a half. And then I was going to go into the squadron and throw in the towel. But I said, no, my father would kill me if I did that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm just going to fight back. So I put that spreadsheet together because I could feel my body consuming itself from the inside. And that made no sense because the guy that was doing that, my supply officer, was hurting the entire ship. He's hurting the mission of the ship. He's hurting national security. If we didn't deploy, that domino would fall and then someone else would have to step up and it was going to be a domino effect. So I said, I'm just going to find a way to show them what's happening here because they just think I'm a whiner. I can't, order the parts correctly or whatever. They just thought I was a whiner. Everybody blew it off. But when I put that spreadsheet together, it just blew me away because it showed at every step of the process that my stuff was being slow tracked. It would sit for days. It would get canceled. They told me to resubmit another requisition. And I had it all right there on one sheet that anybody could see. And when I presented that to the captain, and he and the supply officer were both from Texas. So when I presented that to the captain, I said, look, I've been telling you for weeks now that I need help and my parts aren't getting ordered. This shows you exactly what's happening. If we don't deploy on time, you're going to have to explain that to somebody. And you're not going to be able to blame me because I've been asking for help and I've not been getting it. So what are you going to do now? Because my next step was, if he blew me off again, I was going to take that spreadsheet and walk over to the squadron and knock on the material officer's door and say, hey, we got a problem on this ship. I've done everything I can to fix it, but I'm not going down because these people are not going to support me. So the captain looked at that spreadsheet, called the supply officer up there. He couldn't answer why I wasn't ordering my parts. So that turned everything around. Didn't help me a whole lot because now I've got all this work coming down on me that I wasn't able to do. And the captain wants me to update that spreadsheet every day. And then he calls me up and tells me, I want you to gather all the other department heads together and teach them how to do this because I want one from them every day too. So now everyone's workload has increased because nobody would understand that I was being treated differently than everybody else was. Well, you can imagine how the other department heads felt about that, but none of them stepped forward to say, hey, Keith's having a problem. We need to look at what's going on here.
So you think about that, it's that example, that when there's issues of racism, if there's issues of discrimination or inequitable treatment, it doesn't just hurt that oppressed person or that oppressed group. It has an impact on everybody. Yeah. And it sounds like
absolutely.
You.
Yeah. Now the cascading effect would have been, had I just thrown in the towel and walked away from that job, there were 4 additional jobs that I did very well that would not have happened because I was no longer in the talent pool.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Wow.
We always think like the military, right? How can there be any issues? We all work together. We're all a team. And then you hear the stories and it's just kind of, it was eye-opening for me as a young sailor, right? Like, because especially nuke program, there weren't a lot of diverse people in the nuke program either. And at the time there were no women. And then you start seeing the real life experiences of people. And to me, that was an eye-opening moment because you don't think that, oh, come on, they're not doing it because you must have another issue, right? And they're very good, especially back in the 80s and 90s, of saying, of making it look like there was another issue. How did you get through that? That's my curiosity because I have a really good friend, Lem Lee, who was an electrical officer on a carrier with me. And he talks about this a lot with me, and when we talk on the side. And it's, how do you overcome that where they do everything they can to make it look like it's anything but what it really is?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would assume that it is not racism. There's something else going on here because it doesn't make sense that they're treating me this way simply because of the color of my skin. So I would start trying to eliminate every single thing that it could have been other than that. And typically that would involve me going up and knocking somebody on the forehead and say, hey, we're having a problem. I need to figure out what the problem is. Let's sit down and have a discussion. You tell me what the problem is, and I'll see what I can do to fix it. And if I'm not the problem, then we need to address your behavior, because people will deny that it's race-based, but when you can show them that they're treating you differently than they are someone else, sometimes it's very subtle, tone of voice, mannerisms, etc., and sometimes it's very blatant. And a lot of times people will use humor to try to disguise that. But I just had the direct approach. We're having a problem. I need to figure out what it is. If we can't figure it out, we're going to have to figure out a way to work around it. But we're on the same team, so we need to work together.
So
John, did you?
Yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Joy.
In going through your experience, Keith, John, when you were in, did you ever go through times where you saw that happening and being an ally needed to speak up? Now, I know how you two met, so I can't wait till we get to that story later on about allyship on LinkedIn, right? Who would have thought? But even in the tenor of your career, were there ever moments where you saw that and you were just like, I can't believe this is what I'm seeing, and you had to speak up, or did that voice to do that come later on in your journey?
I'm kind of ashamed to admit that it came later on in my journey. I think, I grew up as you saw in our discussions, sort of insulated from that point of view, not necessarily from, interacting with other races and certainly the Navy's a mixed group. But if you're coming at it from my point of view, I never experienced that growing up, and I never experienced what Keith had to put up with. And so I can think of a couple of times when I was in command or in leadership positions when maybe the issue was racism, but it didn't come up into my point of view because I wasn't attuned to that. I was, like Keith mentioned, what are all the other things it could be? And you just don't like to think about people that might be the cause. And I can think of one specific example where, a young black sailor was having some troubles and came to me as an XO, being late, not turning in stuff on time, and it came to light that he's a single parent and struggling, but then there was other single parents that weren't struggling, and so that sort of to me said, well, maybe it's not, maybe he's not in front of me because of his color, but then you look back at who his chain of command was, they were all white, and they all were quick to dismiss that there was any racial piece to this, but again, why is it that he can't solve his problems? What's not helping him? And is there more to this? And it just were questions that I asked at the time. And I sort of, I think he didn't go to Captain's Mast, gave him some extra instruction and some help. But at the end of the day, I'm not convinced that the reason he wasn't there, the reason he was there and some of the others weren't, had something to do with race.
John,
Can I piggyback on that for a minute?
Please do, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I was a mass yeoman down in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, I saw this happen firsthand, the way young black sailors were treated differently than white sailors with the same issues. The young black sailors would very seldom get a break, and they'd be brought up to captain's mast for one thing or another, and they would talk about the white sailors that were 15 minutes late for work and never got written up, never had any problems, but they're late one time, and all of a sudden they're standing in front of the captain's mast. And they would be able to document with names and dates, et cetera, and showing that they were being treated differently. I had two captains down there, and both of them would dismiss that, saying, you're just trying to get out of being responsible and held accountable. But I talked to these guys every day for 2 years. And I saw it firsthand, even the way the investigations were done. So yeah, there was in fact people being treated differently because of the color of their skin. That's one of the things that led me to become an equal opportunity program specialist, because I had to do the equal opportunity quality indicators every quarter at the end of a quarter, and it showed that blacks were consistently being punished more harshly and more often than the whites that had committed the same offenses, and that's been true throughout the military for decades.
Right. And I would just add that, I often hear when Keith or other folks say something like that, the first response from a lot of leaders is, well, they're just playing the race card, right? Or they're playing the victim. And, someone commented to me the other day, watching one of Keith's videos, that, Keith seems to have a chip on his shoulder. And my response was, well, maybe somebody put that chip on his shoulder,
Yeah.
So yeah, he does, but he doesn't have it because he just made it up. Unless you have, the challenge for someone like me and Nick is, if you have not been in that situation, you probably can't really understand what it's like, and so it's easy to dismiss it.
So John, let's talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
I want to say something quick though.
Yeah.
John, I love when people say that they're playing the victim, because my answer is, you ever think maybe they are?
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
I think that's a possibility, but I don't think it should be your initial response to everything.
Right.
But it's just
that's Nick's sarcasm.
That's my sarcasm. I mean,
Yeah.
works with trauma-induced kids all the time, and she gets the same thing we see it there with the kids.
Right.
It's like, wow, they're just playing the victim. Well, they are a victim.
Right. And if in their mind they are the victim, then that's a piece of the puzzle too.
So John, you stood up, and Joy mentioned it earlier, and I kind of want to take us there, and we talk a little bit about allyship and the coincidental way in which you met Keith online. He was making a comment, and there was another Marine that was bashing him, and you stood up for him, and that's how you two met. He liked your comments. You were standing up for him online. He liked your comment, and I always like how people get these cool ways that they meet each other. So I thought that was pretty cool. But what I'm really curious about is John, you've had a great career. I've read your background. You've had a wonderful career. Middle-aged white man. You don't need this. You could walk away and you could go fishing and live in your big house and have nice Christmases with your family. And why did you stand up for Keith? And why do you do this?
You sound like my wife now, who says leave well enough alone sometimes, but not Keith specifically, but in general.
It's one of those things where I retired and got involved with writing a lot, as you know, Nick, and looking back at Manning, fatigue, and stuff like that. And then when I took the job here back at headquarters, I was starting to get a little bit of pushback on things I was writing. And I decided that maybe it was my best interest to quit and not rock the boat. And then a couple of master chiefs that I had known tangentially, not really worked with directly, but they said, hey, people are reading your stuff. You need to keep it up. And specifically, the enlisted folks are reading. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea. And then so Proceedings reached out and said, hey, we need somebody to write one article a month to keep our online presence fresh. And so I started doing that. But it was mainly about, fatigue and Manning and the same stuff I've been writing about. And then it was kind of Keith's, and certainly a lot of us got caught up in the events of 2020 with, Black Lives Matter and George Foreman and that group. But a lot of folks just went back to business as usual after that. And I think it was Keith that kind of knocked me off the tracks and said, hey, there's more to this than just a couple of protests and go back to work. And then I found that as just happened to be a white man, I'm in a space where a lot of folks don't talk about this. And sometimes I've had a couple cases where, Keith would not have gotten in the room if not for me. And there's been a couple cases where I wouldn't have gotten in the room except for Keith, And so now we kind of have a little thing. If we get invited to talk, then we toss out the other guy's name, and usually they invite both of us.
Nice.
And that allows the audience to hear the same story from two perspectives. And so I found that 1 + 1 makes 3, and we each do stuff on our own, But I also, all of my work, it kind of aligns. Why do I write about fatigue and manpower? It's not because the officers are overworked, it's because the junior enlisted that we're trying so hard to retain are walking out the door because we don't have a culture that makes them feel like they're worthy and productive and included. And so, but Keith has taught me a whole new vocabulary, things like microaggression, I've read some stuff that a lot of my peers won't even read, by Dr. Kendall or Kendi on anti-racism, stuff like that. And so it's just the more I dig, the deeper I find new stuff to talk about. And as long as people will listen, and maybe, I get enough encouragement online, people following. I didn't know that you could follow someone and not be connected to them, but I figured that out the other day. So I'm hitting the follow button and the connect button now. But I would say about once a month, somebody comes over LinkedIn and says, "Hey, I've been following you for a while.
Nice.
Either can you help me with this, or just I like what you're doing." That keeps me motivated. If the junior folks are reading it, and maybe encourage them to speak up.
Well, that's what it's about. It's about making that connection, right? And you seeking to understand. And then we were talking offline before you jumped on about how you're using your leverage as a white man. I know when Nick and I started this company, we brought Joy on, but we talk about that a lot. There are spaces I can't get into because I'm not white. Let's just call it what it is.
Right.
And there are spaces that Nick can't get into because he is white. Joy's a veteran. Joy's a woman. She's a black woman. Those things matter. We all want to get to the same space, but if we've got to leverage those experiences to get there. So it's really cool to hear how you two connected.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because in Iowa, I am definitely not what people think of when they think of veteran. Like even when sometimes if I park in the veteran parking lot at our grocery store, I actually, maybe a month ago, someone followed me into the grocery store and they asked me questions because they weren't sure that I was actually a veteran, which,
oh my God.
So the thing about it is like, you have to, why do you think you have the authority to question me about being a veteran? Now, the thing is, I served almost 16 years. So most people here, I've typically, except for you all, except for all of you, but I'm typically, I've typically, so I'm very comfortable in that. And so they asked me what was my MOS, actually what they said. And I was like, well, I'm Air Force, so I have an AFSC. But what was your MOS? Because I always worked joint service. So right away, they were like, oh, the typical lingo or whatever have you. But it was just such an interesting thing because they drove by when I parked there and they got out, followed me in, and then asked me that. And so and you have that moment of where you have to decide what kind of day it is for you. Is it a day where
thankfully
you
I'm
are
next to you at the time because they get
I know, Nick.
Right.
Exactly.
So here's another example of Iowa. I don't know if you've seen it where you're at for the VA. You'll go to the hospital and you'll see a female vet, a woman vet walking through there, and you can count the number of times someone either looks at them like, "Why are you here?" or "What branch was your husband in?"
Yep.
Wow.
I've heard that. And, they don't do that much. I think I'm getting the reputation down there. They don't do that around me anymore. But but when they do, I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's what was. I was complaining to Keith the other day that I was, been working on a couple of issues, with him together, but the renaming of the stennis, the idea of having beards for our service members, and I'm like, man, it's like really pushing sand up a hill in this diversity space. And he looks at me and he's like, really?
How long have you been involved in this? And I was like, about a year. He's like, welcome to my world,
Well, that's important.
You're pushing
I love it.
quicksand.
I love it.
Right.
I love it.
That leads to my question I want to talk about because I know that there aren't many of us pushing for it, but there's enough that, pushing for renaming of the stennis, pushing for the Uniform Code of Military Justice to include racism in it as an criminal act, as an unlawful act. There's other ones too. We go on and we go back, historically to Admiral Borda, who was really trying to make strides in this. Where did the wheels fall off? And how do we get them back on? Because something definitely happened there where things were happening, progressing, and then...
So help our audience here.
To help our audience out. So the Stennis is an aircraft carrier, the John C. Stennis. If you go back historically and look at his background, it's not pretty definitely from an equity perspective. I'll just say that. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And he's not the only one that a ship's named after that has that history.
So this is part of renaming.
So that's part of it. Uniform Code of Military Justice. So basically, when you join the military, your legal system now becomes Uniform Code of Military Justice. So things like unauthorized absence or even murder is included there. I mean, punishments are included in there. Not to poke anyone in the eye recently, but classified material mishandling, things like that are all in there, right? So, but there's nothing in there really about racism or hate or any of those actions. Other than there's a few things hidden away, like you can't have openly blatant tattoos out that are like Klan signs, things like that, or swastikas. But there's nothing really covering it. And I know Keith for a long time has been pushing on this, and he's kind of brought along folks like John I and other individuals, and there's been some great writings on it. I think you read one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point during our tenure, there was an Admiral Borda, that was really trying to push things.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that kind of fell to the wayside when he moved on, and just kind of curious, like from your point of views, because you're more involved in it now, still live on the East Coast than I am out here in Iowa, but how do we get why did those wheels fall off, and how do we get them back? Or is it just part of what we see in general now, where history just keeps repeating itself?
Things go in cycles, and 1988 was kind of a low point in terms of that cycle. 1988, the CNO announced that there was widespread bias and discrimination against blacks in the military. And then that was in June. And then I think it was in October or November, he announced that there was widespread bias in promotion. So the top Navy officer is saying that we have widespread bias against our black service members, and we're going to put together this plan, CNO's study group on race in the Navy. And Admiral Borda was Chief of Naval Personnel, I think, at that point. So he's intimately involved in gathering all that information. So he knew where all the bodies were buried. He knew they did surveys of white service members, and they found that they harbored negative feelings and perceptions of black people. So a couple of years later, in 1990, there was a report that came out in All Hands magazine that talked about Admiral Borda trying to fix all these issues, et cetera. And then in 1991, you had the tailhook scandal. So there was a lot of pressure being applied to the Navy, pushback, because it wasn't called woke back then. It was called political correctness. And in 1988, that's when Ronald Reagan named an aircraft carrier for John Stennis. So you had Reagan pushing back against affirmative action, naming an aircraft carrier for a segregationist, and you had the top Navy officer saying there was widespread bias and discrimination. So fast forward to 91, 92, you start with all the tailhook stuff, and then a few years later, Admiral Borda committed suicide because he was getting a lot of pushback from the retired admirals lobby for trying to change things, for pushing for women, et cetera, et cetera. And when he was, he was CNO, he was about to be interviewed by Colonel David Hackworth and somebody else about some little, insignificant V's on his ribbon bar from when he was in the Vietnam arena. And he was under so much pressure, I believe he just took himself off the planet. He wrote a couple of notes, one to his family and one to his sailors. And I don't think either one of those notes have ever been released. But it was just a confluence of things. And everybody saw what happened to Borda. And I think with this Task Force One Navy thing, all the same pushback from the same quarters started to happen. So the Task Force One Navy thing sort of fizzled out. You have all this pushback against the anti-extremism stand down, against wokeness, et cetera. It's like a sine wave. You have high cycles and low cycles. And I think we have hit a low cycle. I've been pushing for several years now to get the Navy to release the formal discrimination complaint statistics, because we don't know what happened in the Obama years. But I can tell you in 2017, the first year of the Trump presidency, the number of substantiated complaints went from an average of 20% down to 6%, which is exactly what happened in 1988. The year that report came out, I'll give you the 3 years that are important. 1987, 1988, and 1989. 1987, the substantiation rate was 6%. 1988, it was 3%. And a year after the CNO said it was widespread bias and discrimination, it dropped to 0%. You had 156 complaints, and not one of them was substantiated. And part of it was because of the political climate at the time. The President of the United States was pushing back against affirmative action and naming aircraft carriers after segregationists. And there was a high point for the Martin Luther King movement, etc. So the leadership at the top really does set the tone for what's going to happen at the deck plate. But what was significant, and I've never gotten an answer to this, but right after Tailhook happened in 91. The very next year, the Navy had 350 something complaints of discrimination, and they substantiated 78%. That's a tenfold increase over the average for all the years before that. So something happened in the leadership of the Navy that says, we are going to take these complaints seriously. You don't go from 7% to 78% without some external influence having happened. I believe the answer to that is in Admiral Board's files, but I've never been able to find out because the Navy won't share any information with me regarding that system.
Interesting. So where are we where are we today, either of you, John or Keith, as we think about how our branches of the military deal with discrimination and racism and diversity today? If you had to judge us, I guess, on a scale, our military, where do you think we are? Either of you can answer that. I mean,
I'll take a stab. I mean, I'm obviously speaking on my own behalf. I'm a GS now, and so I'm part of the solution or part of the problem. And I think there's a couple pieces to the puzzle that you're talking about. One is, I would say we don't know where we're at because we don't arduously and rigorously publish the data. Compare it to sexual harassment, sexual assault, where there's an annual report that comes out by direction of Congress. It has detailed statistics, and it's quite a compelling read, with numbers like 28% of women and 6% of men were sexually harassed last year. 35% of those who filed complaints were retaliated against. I mean, those are stunning numbers. But they just sort of, and the report itself says that in fact, there's a great quote that says the first bullet in the report is people don't trust the system. And it says that there is a significant gap between what senior leadership thinks is happening and what's actually happening. And so you would think that if I read that as a senior leader, I would drop whatever was in my inbox and go after it. And yet we don't. And so, and that's for data that we have. And then when you go look at discrimination, A, because we don't collect the data as we've articulated in our article about the UCMJ, and B, because there is a broad pushback like the pushback on the anti-extremism edict from General Milley was, he wasn't implying that, every third person in the military is an extremist, but the number should be zero,
There we go.
And so, whether it's political pushback, you can look at the, CNO adding Kennedy's book to his reading list and then taking it off. We as an institution, two separate issues. One is we're confronted with the data and we don't really digest it. And then number two is if you're not confronted with the data, there's no imperative to act. It's kind of like the discussion, not to be the one note wonder here, but Keith and I are sporting these beards. There's data, there's clear data that policy for those that have a PFB are disadvantaged in both career choices and statistically by their fit reps and their anything that relates to their advancement. And so we know this, right? And yet we wring our hands and decide not to change the policy. And it's just frustrating that it's not part of the normal conversation every day. Or you say, you hear people say, well, we're just not going to talk about that, right?
And people need to know this. I think that, I know Nick's, schooled me a number of times on, we have a great military. We have our branches, we have the greatest military in the world, but if we can't admit to our problems, it's not going to always be great. And we're seeing that. And Nick reminds me of that a number of times.
Right.
Things aren't always as rosy as they look if we were to look honestly at the situation.
Well, you just look at manning levels now. I mean, all the services are 40% down, and right. I mean, I think people have had enough.
I agree. I super agree.
Right. And then when people leave and then they go and tell their friends back in high school what their experience was, they don't want to join.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not high school. Kind of change gears, but not really. So, John, you have an interesting background, and you grew up in North Georgia, and I was reading some of information, and you talked about in an interview you did with, I think you did the interview with Keith actually last year, and you were talking about growing up with East Side High School in North Georgia, and your community was predominantly black, and West Side was whiter, but you attended a private school, and the story intrigued me because you mentioned that you would drive through the black neighborhood on your way to school, and you had a Confederate license plate, and you would go to school. That was just your life, and that you never really talked to a black person, and not because you didn't want to, but just because it never happened until you're about 18 or 19. So I'm wondering today, as you look back at your young self at that time, what was your mindset around black people in general, and what is it today? You know, people change, and I'm just curious because I find it striking that you lived in North Georgia, you drove through a black neighborhood, you had a Confederate flag on your truck, and you never spoke to black people. And I'm wondering if that, you said it was because you never have, and I just wondered what your mindset was about black people generally then, and and when did it change?
That's a great question. I would almost answer that I didn't have a mindset because I didn't think about it. You know, my mom was a teacher, so I got free tuition at the private school. And so, I looked at my yearbook the other day just to confirm it, and not a single black student in the entire 4-year, high school. My church, I found out later we had one black member of the church, and then he was sitting in the back. He was actually a deacon, but he would sit in the back and participate. Southern Baptist Church. And I found out later from my sister, who continued after I left, that he had been pulled aside and asked to find a different church, right? By the God-fearing Southern Baptists of rural Georgia, and so when I went to the Naval Academy, it was pretty, non-diverse at the time. This is 1980. And so I think we had one black person in our 90-man company on a different floor. So it wasn't a matter of, it wasn't like I avoided it. It's just it wasn't part of the world that I lived in. And so, fast forward, I don't know, 40 years, the high school not the one that I went to, but the one that my neighbors went to in my neighborhood in Rome, Georgia, was in the news again, because if you remember, there was an article where there were white students driving around a pep rally in pickup trucks with rebel flags yelling racial slurs, and the black student protested the next day by stepping out of class, and then they were kicked out of school, right?
Wow.
So that's my hometown 40 years later. Which is one of the reasons I left, by the way. But I think the difference is that as I said in the Navy, I think I said it. I'm not sure I lived it. That I don't have black sailors, white sailors, male and female sailors. I just have sailors, and so that's kind of the way that I approach things. And I think the problem with that is you sort of gloss over the fact that there are differences. And there's things that, that Joy had to worry about when she was in the military that I never had to. I had an article not too long ago about nail polish. I don't know if I sent that to you guys. But why do we have regulations about what color nail polish you can wear? And why do men
One of
care?
my favorite things when I got out was to be able to do nail stuff.
but that's a big. I mean, my wife obsesses over her nail polish color. And to have that choice be made for you by men, I never had to think about that. What kind of earrings you wear? I mean, I think one of my friends is pretty excited she can wear diamond stud earrings now for the first time.
Yeah.
So we're starting to make those. Nick, back to your question, is we are making incremental progress in ways that we never have before, whether it's hairstyles or jewelry or nail polish or whatever. But I'm not sure whether those are driven by a true want to do better or just by the pragmatism that if we don't do that, we're going to lose, we're going to have more manning problems.
That's always my worries. Are they doing it for the right reason?
Right.
At the end of the day, I guess it doesn't matter all that much if it's the reason, but if you don't explain the reason, it's kind of like this beard discussion. It's not really a racial issue. It's a readiness issue. It just so happens that the people affected happen to be of one race. So if I'm Keith, it is a racial issue, right? Pregnancy is not a gender issue, except the fact that men don't get pregnant. So you can look at it both ways. I'm monopolizing the talk here, but
No, thanks for
No,
sharing.
this
The
is good
reason I
stuff.
had
Yeah.
asked about your childhood and kind of when the light went off in your brain about noticing the difference around Black people, because in your article you said I drove through this neighborhood and you said I had a Confederate flag on my
Right.
plate.
Well, just to put that in context,
I didn't know if you knew what that
so
was at the time or what have you. So
kind of goes to our school system. If you go to school in the South, the Civil War wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights and fighting for our state. And I'll caveat that second time that I am and was at the time a huge Leonard Skinner fan of their music and their songs, and their symbol was a Confederate flag. If you look back at their stuff, every T-shirt, everything, and so I don't think I've even mentioned this. The shed that we built in the backyard when we used to party had a Confederate flag the size of the ceiling painted on the ceiling.
well, this is all. That's why I asked. This is lived experience, right? Like this is.
It is.
You
Right.
know better. This is when I grew up. I was a big Dukes of Hazzard fan.
Yeah.
Right.
Me
I
too.
love that flag. I love that car.
right.
But I think also it's an education piece. It's an understanding piece that I won't do that now. The good thing about claiming ignorance is I think I was kind of ignorant. But that's not an excuse. But I can't go back and change the past either, but I can learn from it.
There are reasons and not excuses, and you're willing to learn, and that's why I asked. I think that's a great story to tell, and you put it out there, and I think people should hear that, right? I didn't know any better. This is what I knew, but this is what I know
you used
now.
to think about motorcycles.
Yeah, I always tell the story about my Harley Davidson. Like whenever I had, I used to get high blood pressure as a kid when I saw the Harley Davidson sign because I was taught that they were all racist gang members. And they didn't like Black people, and I didn't like them. Like anybody I saw with the Harley, I at a teenager, I just wanted to fight,
Right.
because I was taught that. I was conditioned to think that way.
Well, stereotypes can cut both ways too. That's
And
great.
I love Harleys today. My wife won't let me have one.
No, I'm such a bad driver. I don't need to be on a motorcycle.
That's me too.
Well, Nick, do we have a listener question today?
We do.
Let's get to our listener question.
I got to pull up my phone here and find where I had it sent to me.
So to our listeners, we keep bringing questions to us at info@toprankedtalentsolutions.com, our long name. Keep your questions coming. And Nick, what do we got?
So Andy from here in middle of nowhere, Iowa, Cedar Rapids, has a question for the two of you, and we can answer this too because we love this because we're similar too, right? With our makeup. But how does it work in the space as a white man and a Black man working together and leveraging back and forth? We kind of talked about it a little bit already, but how does that work?
Mhm.
Well, I can tell you that for me, it is a 100% plus because I can talk to John about things, and sometimes I come across as having a chip on my shoulder, as is said. What I can tell you is that there are thousands and thousands of people who agree with me who would never do what I'm doing because they have to worry about feeding their family, they have to worry about retaliation, they have to worry about, all sorts of things. I'm in a position where I can say things that people will reach out to me privately and tell me. John can take what I say and put it in context so that it's not so threatening or angering to a guy that looks like him. Well, what Keith is really trying to say is this. So he's like my white man translator. President Obama had Luther, the anger translator. Well, John is my white man translator.
Yeah.
So that works for me. And
What's your new name, Nick?
That's my new name. That's more angry than you sometimes. I don't know.
I know.
One of the things that I find interesting, and I'm just going to lay this out here because that's what I do. I have gotten more support from John as a white man just entering this space than I have from people that look like me that will privately tell me, keep doing what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Senior Black officers. It's almost as though they're afraid to acknowledge that what I say is true.
Mhm.
When you can read a book put out by the Naval War College about the first 50 Black flag officers, and they talk about their own experiences. Some of them were much worse than anything that I endured. but they don't want to talk about it publicly. There's one, Admiral Haney, I met him in Annapolis when I was at the 50th anniversary of the NNOA anniversary. He bought 2 copies of my book. We sat beside each other. We talked. There was an article in the Washington Post about the discrimination he faced, and we had a great conversation. I don't know that he's going to blurb the new book. He said that he would. He bought 2 copies of the book, which I thought was great. I tried to give them to him, and he said, "Nope, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to pay you for these books." So we'll see how that translates. But I've talked to a number of senior black officers, active duty and retired, and there's a reluctance to come out behind me and say, "Hey, this guy isn't out there all by himself. He's just running his mouth because everybody else is unwilling or unable to do so."
Exactly. That happens a lot. And I think you're almost in the military, like I'm reflecting on my military career, and I feel like you're almost conditioned as an airman. Like, I mean, if you think about it, we come up on a ram where you can't even talk about the president when he's in office, right? Like we don't talk about that, but even the fact that when you're active duty, you can get in trouble for criticizing the system that you're operating within, right? And so I think because of that, it is innately in us where, like, there was a couple years probably before I was like, oh, I can outwardly say my political opinion now. Oh, oh, in addition.
Let me give you an example that drives that home. There's a guy named Stuart Scheller that came out on active duty criticizing the military, and he was kind of over the top. There's another guy that wrote a book about Marxism, et cetera, Matthew Lohmeyer. Both of those guys were invited to leave the service, as I understand it. And now imagine if a black person on active duty comes out and starts talking about the Navy's hiding discrimination, the military's hiding discrimination complaints. They're not addressing racism. We are right now at this head in the sand mentality. We want to pretend like everything is okay when it's not. Back in the Vietnam era, this general was quoted in Newsweek or one of those major magazines saying that the Army had solved the racism problem. It was a few weeks later that all these race riots broke out on the military bases.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
We are facing another period of denial and deflection.
So each of you can answer this, all 4 of you military folks here. I'm the only non-military one, but when we talk militant. Probably to a degree. I'll buy that a few days a week. Having said that, though, is retaliation more prevalent in the military, in the armed services, than it is in like corporate America? It seems, listening to you all, that retaliation is like pretty much just expected in the military.
It's not even called. Yeah, it's not even called retaliation. It's like literally you can't. It's literally in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Some of the things that you can and can't do, right? So it's not even. You don't even feel that it's retaliation because you're just taught from the very moment you go in and you learn your core values that. You don't do these things. We don't talk about Bruno. For if you guys watch cartoons, that's right.
Bruno, Popeye the Sailor Man?
No, it's from Encanto. Yeah.
We're talking Navy. I thought you were talking about Bruno from Popeye.
No, I'm talking Disney.
Oh yes.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
All right. The Reuters did this special report on racial discrimination in the military. I've posted on it a number of times. And the number one complaint that people have about coming forward reporting discrimination is retaliation. It's been that way forever, and it will continue to be that way because retaliation goes unpunished.
Yes.
There's a very famous case in the Coast Guard, Lieutenant Commander Kimberly McLear. She complained about sexual harassment and racial discrimination, was retaliated against. Nobody was punished. She had to go outside the military strictures to get some help with the DODIG, and she testified in front of Congress. And to this day, no one's been held accountable for what happened to her. I've had experiences with retaliation since I retired from the military. I won't get into it right now, but I'm 2 years into a Navy doctor being angry because I was writing about stuff that I write about. and he accused me of circumventing their system and scheduling myself for a biopsy without his knowledge or permission, which everyone I talked to says is absolutely ludicrous. But that's what he accused me of while I was laying on the exam table getting ready to have a prostate biopsy. I filed a formal complaint with the hospital. I filed an IG complaint when that went nowhere. I filed a TRICARE grievance, and that went nowhere. They said my complaint did not rise to the level of a grievance. But the
Wow.
same day they got my complaint that morning, that afternoon, I had a letter in my mailbox from the hospital saying that I had done nothing wrong and the error was on their part. So it took me doing all three of those things to get my name cleared. And then I filed a FOIA request wanting to know why they had a safety stand down in that department based on something that happened to me. What was said about me that I did or did not do? And I've been waiting for more than 60 days for that to be released to me. It's all been approved, but they won't release it to me. So something's going on there, and I don't think I have to worry too much about retaliation because I think they know now I keep a sharp knife in my back pocket. But what you need to understand is not everyone will put themselves through what I did to try to get to the truth. Because I learned the hard way that these things can come back and bite you years later when you're least expected. So I want to be clear that if there was any retaliation that took place, anything that was said that I did or didn't do, I want to have those documents in my hand. They've got 30 pages of stuff that I wrote about what happened, and I get one little letter saying that I did nothing wrong, but everything else is kind of out there buried in the file somewhere. I'm entitled to that, and I expect to see it. Most people won't do that because they won't come after you for your complaint. They'll come after you for being 5 minutes late for work, or for not getting this done on time, or for whatever else it might be. It's not directly related to what you were complaining about, but it is in response to what you were complaining about. And that's why people don't come forward, because they know that they have a target on their back.
I'll just add that I think one thing about, I don't know. Well, I mean, I was in the private sector for a while, and I don't know that there's that much difference. I told a story. I told this to Keith before. I was buying a car at one of the local vendors, and the gentleman that came up to me was black, and he was a veteran. And I asked him. I said, "Hey, you've been out for a couple of years. You were in for 7. What's the biggest difference between the military and the civilian?" And without hesitation, he said, "Racism." And I said, "Wow, was it that bad in the military?" He's like, No, it was much better. It's worse out here." He's like, "There's no way that I would have gotten you as a customer if my boss wasn't busy with somebody else, right?" And so, that was one data point. But the other piece I think that is subtle in the military is I can retaliate pretty strongly without anybody really knowing it. Not to get into great details, you all have an evaluation system where they tell you that a 3 is a good number on a scale of 5. But that doesn't really mean that when it's a selection board, and if you don't have straight 5s, then you're not selected. And so one of my friends, an example of with the beard policy is he had chief petty officer with a beard because of his skin condition, and they gave him a 3 at military barrack. And he's like, "My uniform, I'm fit, I'm physically fit, I'm in good shape. I have, my uniform is spotless." And they said, "Yeah, but that beard just doesn't look professional." Right. So not a word written in the eval about the beard. This is in the verbal debrief. But when that goes to the board, if you want to make chief and you have a 3 out of 5 in military bearing, you're dead in the water.
You can hang it up.
But then no one can prove retaliation, right? And so, do I give you a Navy Commendation Medal or a Navy Achievement Medal, or no award at all? No one's going to know. But the absence of one at the end of a tour will speak volumes to a selection.
My first eval was a 4. I won't even say I was livid because I don't even think I understood what it meant. And at the time, the staff sergeant who gave it to me, who was less, and this isn't me, this is other people that saw when I got a 4 were like, "Okay, that's only because you are more skilled than the person writing it for you." And he had got a 4. And his argument to me was that, "Well, you don't have anywhere to grow if I gave you a 5. You probably deserve a 5, but then you don't have anywhere to grow, which really, when it came time for promotion, which is that your income, which is award opportunities, everything that impact. I didn't know at the time, because again, Air Force is a little different. Like Navy and Army, you all do a better job of setting up your mentorship, right? Like somebody's going to be on that floor looking out for your seamen and for your Air Force. It's a lot of times it's more like, I'm going to 9 to 5, right? Like,
You're on your own.
You're on your own. So like, you don't really see at that point. I was closer to a lot of my Army supervisors and my Navy supervisors, because I didn't often see my Air Force evaluator until it was time for my evaluation, right? And so I didn't know or have somebody to advocate for me in that way. Now, retrospect, I understand that again, even that has like undertones of being a woman, of being all of these other things. Whereas, so I wasn't pegged to be the person that rose up quick to the ranks. I remember when I went to leadership school, I won a John Levitt, which is a big deal in leadership school, because typically it's these buff guys and your special force and your all of these things. And so here I was like an intel troop that didn't even, and I won it. And I think I was pregnant even at the time. So just, it was, and you could literally see on some of my peers' faces that they were like, "You picked the black girl?" Like, really? Like, her, the pregnant black girl who's like 5'4", she's 5'7" in heels, but she's like 5'4", she's a little round. I was even more round then. I was pregnant at the time. This is who's going to represent our class. And so but again, when you're going through it, you don't feel it in that, like, you don't realize microaggressions, you don't realize, you're just like, oh. And even my first achievement medal I got because of an Army sergeant who was supervising another area. And he would see me coming to work and was like, "No one's put you in for an award. I see you here all the time. You're not supervising. You're doing the work of somebody beyond your stature. Your leadership is going to put you in for an award." And then he went over to my leadership and was like, "You will write her up for a medal."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great. Yeah, that's allyship.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's
I
awesome.
still want to make Air Force jokes, but we always throw Anthony for a loop when we make fun of each other.
I know.
But now my son said how to do it, right? It's like Air Force evals, like what your posture in the chair was and how many cops you had.
Nick, since you outnumber me right now, I'll let you have it.
And thank you, Keith. We could go all day on the show, but as we wrap up here, I think what I've learned and what we hope our listeners have learned is there is open challenges with issues of racism today in the military, in the 4 branches. And we have folks on this show who, all of you have been in the military for decades and have seen this, and you've seen it then and you see it now. So it's important that we bring that to light. As we close out, I would ask either of you, John or Keith, any words of advice for military leaders or folks that can help change and help us. I know we feel helpless, but we're all 4 of us are on this call for a reason. Any words of advice on what we can do?
I'll let Keith have the last word, but I'll start with 2 things I've learned from him. Listen and read. So, one of the things that Keith always, day doesn't go by that he doesn't send me a book to read. And I have a stack of them, literally sort of on my shelf. But they're books that wouldn't have come to my attention. The latest one that really hit me was one called 5 Smooth Stones. Have you guys seen that or heard that?
No, I haven't.
So this is a basic story about, it's set in like the 1940s. So it's kind of modern times, but it's a young black man growing up. His father is killed in a lynching. And then he becomes an activist. At the end of the story, I don't want to spoil it, but he meets a similar fate. But it goes through the fact that, unlike me, who was driving to school and felt safe, under the segregational laws and the Jim Crow laws, he could be killed by a bus driver without retribution. And it just never occurred to me. And I'm reading this book, and I'm sort of relating to this person who had to put up with stuff that I would have never. I had to get up every morning wondering whether he was going to come back home alive. And so reading books like that, to open your eyes. And then sitting down and listening, this my whole activism from this beer topic came from sitting with 3 Navy personnel who told me horror stories about their own experiences, and how they had been literally discriminated against. And the best quote was, back to your question, was, hey, if you're being discriminated against by your boss, it's not your advantage to point it out. This is what a Navy chief petty officer told. And so, the two things, the only way you don't learn while you're running your mouth. You learn while you're reading, and you learn while you're listening. And that would be my, and listen to people that had a different background. That would be my final thought.
Thanks, John. Keith?
My thought is, when you hear someone talking like me, or like John, or somebody saying that, the South was about, states' rights, etc. Ask yourself, what is it that I don't know about this situation, and how can I learn more about it? Because you have to take yourself outside of your comfort zone to understand where other people are coming from. Unless you can put yourself in their shoes and understand why they feel the way they do, you're never going to be able to relate to that person.
Yes.
I have a book on my bookshelf right now written by 2 brothers, and the title of the book is The South Was Right. It's got a big Confederate flag on it, and they go through all the reasons why it wasn't about, et cetera, et cetera. And I just kind of pick those arguments apart, and I compare it to other stuff that I've read, and I do some research. So if I ever had a conversation with those guys, I'm able to point out, well, what you said here isn't entirely accurate. So why did you say it this way? And what is it about what I'm saying that you find not to be true? So you got to start with a baseline.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the same baseline, you're just going to talk past each other. Find something that you can agree on, and then work your way forward from there. But if you're never going to agree on the basic facts, the basic issues, Keith has a chip on his shoulder. Okay, I will own that. I will own that I have a chip on my shoulder. Now, let's go back and unpack why Keith might have a chip on his shoulder. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Speaks right up our alley.
We talk a lot about informed expression versus uninformed expression.
Exactly.
And
getting to root
getting
issues.
to the why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you, Keith. Thank you, John. Joy, to take us out here. We appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you so much. Again, I was so excited for the show today because I felt like it was going to give such a different perspective that people don't think about. As I want to thank both of you, all 3 of you. Thank you for your service, because I understand the sacrifice that it takes to defend our nation. And democracy has a price, right? Even in the times where democracy may have not been afforded to you, when I think about some of the things that you've done, Keith, democracy has a price, and you've been willing to pay that price. And John, you've been willing to pay that price. And Nick, you've been willing to pay that price. And so I want to thank you. Thank you. Yes, not as much as you all, but thank you so much. I just appreciated being able to stand on your shoulders. And again, so thank you. This has been an excellent episode. And please, everyone, be on the lookout. Keep an eye on our social media for future episodes of Breaking Barriers, the DEIB podcast. We're going to be dropping them every month. We're going to have more great conversations like this to give you just different insights into the world of DEIB and how you can do some of the great information from our guests and take it back to your own organizations.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you both again. Big shout out to our 5-star presenting sponsor, Kirkwood Community College. We appreciate your partnership on this podcast. Also, big thanks to our silver sponsor, PG Cares. Also want to give thanks to our friends of Breaking Barrier supporters, Community Savings Banks, and Tyler, Link, and Barnes DDS. We'd love to hear from you. Hit us up with your questions, comments, suggestions, ideas, critiques, whatever, to info@toprankedtalentsolutions.com.
Yep. Thank you. A special thanks to our listeners. We would not be here without you. Please like and share. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you share it with a friend. We're trying to give lessons out here. So thank you all for your time. Let's all continue to break barriers together.
Yep. Let's break some barriers.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, y'all.
Thanks.
Advancing equity is not a one-year project. It's a generational commitment.
There are too few people in the world willing to be the domino, too few people willing to take that fall.